All good. All good. Good arvo. It's a nice, beautiful spring arvo here, and not even a cloud in the sky. And I've been for a couple of laps, and it's a beautiful spring arvo. And I was doing a bit of reflecting on how sometimes you go for a football trial and you don't make it. It's not about rejection. For me, sometimes it's about redirection. And I'll just sort of go into a bit more detail. And I remember one experience that I had. And it was with Rochdale Football Club. It was in November, mid-November, 95. I was training there for like 3 weeks and on a trial, and at the end of it, it didn't work out. In the beginning, I did a bit of training with the first team, then they said, okay, we'll put with the youth team for a bit and see how you get on. And at the end of it, it was a good bloke, the coach, and he said to me at the end of it, he goes, you know what, if you want to carry on training to get yourself in shape, you can do. But obviously, sort of like, I was early 20s, he goes, do you really want to be training with the youth players? The first team have said that basically, you're not what they're looking for. And for me, at that point, it was a difficult thing to process. And I'll explain why. Because I'd been, throughout August, early September, I was in Italy, having a few trials out there, playing a few lower league games. Then I went out to Romania and from during September, November, and I was sort of had a few trials out there, and I was playing some lower league games there, and I decided to come over England. I had some family in the northwest and stayed with them, and unfortunately, the trial didn't go to plan, and it was obviously disappointing, and that sort of trial comes to mind because today I was watching the build-up on TV, the Rochdale versus York game. The winner goes up to the to league football. And I couldn't help think, my experience that time at sort of Rochdale when I had the trial, and it was obviously sort of disappointing. And I thought I'd share anecdotally, because everyone's, each to their own. We all have our own experiences. I'm not here to get any advice or make any suggestions, nothing like that. So it's not my place to give advice or make suggestions. But, what I thought I'd do is, just a sort of a few pointers what I learnt from there. And I suppose, it's always good to sort of share and we learn. And I mean, at the end of it, as disappointing as it was, I sat down and just took time to process things. And I think that I thought to myself, the narrative running through your mind, I'm not good enough, and so on and so forth. But then I thought to myself, when you think about it, I didn't start playing for a team till about 18, 19, a proper team in state league 8. I was about 19 by the time I started playing. Prior to 19, I was just playing street forge football in the parks and that. I played for the old local team, but nothing major. And it was only through different mates, why don't you go play for state league? I thought, you know what, I may as well. So, I did the rounds there and eventually got taken on by a team I was sort of comfortable to play for and distance traveling, that sort of stuff. So it wasn't too long when you think about after that, a couple of years or so after the first time I'd sort of started playing for a team in state league, I sort of found myself traveling around Europe and trialing and that sort of stuff. So I thought I've come a long way just to be here training and trialing around players that have been in the football system, be it the Centre of Excellence or Academy or whatever, from 5 or 6. I'm going head to head and, with them. So I think sometimes what I'm getting at is putting it into perspective, so to speak. And I didn't have this desire, ambition to be a footballer, so to speak. I love my music too, and big in grunge music. So, but as you do, I played a lot of street forge football, and I thought, I may as well play for a team. And then, for one reason or the other, one opportunity come up, sort of thing, and then you find yourself kind of training and sort of, and you look at things in different perspectives. So, what I would say is some of the things I did afterwards that sort of helped me sort of move forward from that disappointment, is the realization the story we tell ourselves is important. Like, take some time to think about the narrative. Think some time at the narrative, and it's useful to ask the coach. Sometimes the truth is not what you want to hear. The coach might say, you don't think you're good enough, and that's their opinion, that sort of stuff. At that trial at Rochdale, the coach didn't say that to me. He said, he was quite positive. He said, you got some good pace, and you did well in the small-sided games, but you're not what the first team was looking for. And to be fair, I knew I was off the pace, and afterwards he actually recommended to get some experience playing in some lower league, non-league teams, and I did. I did some northwest counties. I would have some trials again with other pro teams here and there. But the irony is that eventually I would go on to sort of work as a performance coach with professional players individually, and work in the professional game and semi-pro game as performance coach, until eventually I sort of move out of that and go into lecturing in academia, which I still do now. And so the moral of the story is, for me, some of the key takeaways for me, and like I said, I'm not giving any advice or suggestions. This is my own experience, but I think the first thing to do, absolutely, speak to family about it if you can, and to get your head around it, or friends and support networks, have a talk about it. Get back training if it's what you want to do, and you want to sort of keep yourself going, and sort of get back training as soon as you can. I got back training as soon as I can, and I enrolled on a number of courses, football courses, to learn the game. I also ended up finding a conditioning coach I spoke about before. He was at the time the conditioning coach I was working with at the time in '96. It was called Chris Butler. He was also the conditioning coach of Wigan Rugby League, which was one of the best rugby league teams in the world at that time. So he was their conditioning coach, and he had a stable of his own athletes. So training with him, and sometimes he'd occasionally bring me to train the runs up Rivington Moors, just occasionally, not very often, but for the most part I was training with him and the stable of athletes. So that kind of opened up a whole new world to me too, really. So I think you look at things, you evaluate things. I was doing some personal development courses as well, learning about myself, learning about psychology and stuff, just learning, just going out there, this thirst for knowledge. I was working in the factory as well at the time to make ends meet, and that was a great learning experience too. And the positive was, I was traveling, having a good time, seeing the world, so to speak, and it was an incredible experience. I think that's why it's really important too, to sort of, in those situations, get out there, and keep enjoying your life and that sort of stuff, and see it more as a redirection, because you don't know, every player's journey is different. One player, you've got to think other players around you've got a whole different journey than what you have. So the big takeaways for me in those situations is, when you get rejected from a trial, is see it more as not failure but redirection, to where I know it sounds pretty esoteric, but to where you're meant to be, be it in football, be it in another industry, be it wherever really. But I think the big takeaways for me is, in that situation, don't spend too much time dwelling over it. One, I'd say get feedback off the coaches and be prepared to sort of really listen and take things on board and see where you need to improve. Start working towards finding other teams to train with or trial with. Speak to family, close friends, support networks to help pick yourself back up again. That's the sort of another important thing as well. And get training as soon as you can. Get out there and get training again as soon as you can. That is an important thing for me. To sort of get back out there and start training and appreciate sometimes it's not about you. Sometimes it is not good enough, but sometimes it's not about you not being good enough. It's who they need at the time, which player they need. There's so many permutations and you know, so on and so forth. And there's been plenty of players that have been rejected from trials who've gone on to play. I think every player who plays football at some point is going to be rejected from a trial one way or the other. There's going to be very few, you'd think. You know, at least that's my opinion. You know, everyone's going to sort of, you know, suffer some sort of rejection. It's how they respond to that. But the moral of the story is, you know, I don't want to sound like, you know, wishy-washy and you know, everything sort of always sort of falls into place with where you want to be. You know, sometimes you might end up taking a different career path, like what I did ultimately in the end. But I suppose the moral of the story is about sort of, you know, picking yourself up. And I can only speak anecdotally. The things I did that really sort of helped me at that point was to get feedback off the coach, get organising different trials and get playing at whatever level I could. Again, enjoy the game. I went out there and started enjoying the game again, played some park football with people again, just to get the enjoyment back again. You know, found a conditioning coach again as well. That was a sort of big thing for me, and just started doing sort of courses to learn, not just in football, in other areas too. I felt like learning provided sort of growth. So that were the sort of key things that worked for me, and not see it as sort of failure was the big deal, more about sort of feedback and put a sense of perspective on it too, that narrative. That's my take on it. Always great to hear your take. There you go.